part of the charter. But I also think the charter needs to include, this was a parent organization or kind of an advisory group originally in there, and I would fully admit it probably wasn't written very well originally. I mean, it was kind of, you know, the parent didn't quite fit PTE, but I just printed one of these off. I'll pass it around. You guys can take a look at it. But this is the requirements from CTE for a technical advisory committee, and these are made up of business people. And you can do it. There are different ways to create them. So I think they're in place. Yeah, and how they're created, but they're not. Just seems strange here that we have a new TAC that's not this, and it isn't mentioned.
Right. It was probably just a mistake by Chris Jorgensen. You know, it's probably, it was meant to be technical advisory.
That's what I got the gut feeling of, and then when I read it, I said, they missed it.
Because all of our programs do have technical action committees. So, and then we meet as a whole, one in the fall and one in the spring. That's all of our technical actions or advisory committees, and then also individually as each individual pathway. They meet at least once a year. So they meet 3 times in total.
And I think it would be very easy just to take technical advisory committee and take a little paragraph out of here, probably.
Isn't that kind of similar to the second paragraph one that's in the document already?
No,
The second paragraph in blue there?
Yeah. It kind of talks about.
That's not how those tax are
comprised. So it's kind of a mesh of both, it appears.
Yeah, that's the problem, is there's a mesh and it just doesn't, it just needs to be, and honestly, if you want to put in student organizations, I put in student organizations and I put in technical advisory committees as 2 separate CTSOs. Yeah. Or whatever.
Because we're required to have those 2.
You are.
The CTSOs.
That's right.
What's the CTSO?
Career Technical Student Organization. So your BPAs, FFAs, USA.
That's probably not an issue to fix.
No, we can fix, it's just wording. Yes, we can fix that.
So we'll read technical advisory committee instead of technical action.
Correct.
And this will be moved to a different section of what's here now.
Well, I think there's a couple ways to fix it. One, you could do both, but you can probably name the second paragraph what's different about the student.
There's a couple easy ways to do it, I think. I agree.
So we'll unless you want to do that now,
No, I'm not.
I was hoping we would just take it back and clean that part up. I think we see the point.
This next one is one that I think relates to the performance certificate and kind of the charter, but on page 25, this is a good place to kind of.
Mr. Rush, you said page 19, and were you going to go to that other page later, or was that related to the first concern?
I'll go to the other page later. Okay. 19 is a big question, and maybe a discussion that the boards need to have, and I think it relates to the performance certificate. So
19 or 25?
Excuse me, 25. He said 19, that stuck in my head. I gotta get it out now.
I'll share.
And really it comes back, and it's in probably more than one places here, but it comes back to the purpose of PRTA. And I think that the purpose of PRTA, I think it would be better to define that a little bit better. So at some point in the purpose of PRTA, like on the website and other places, it talks about offering a complete high school program through an online and professional technical. And then if you look at the changes that are being made here throughout the document, like the curriculum, how the curriculum works. You know, there are blue lines on curriculum and there's blue lines in those areas. It's all about professional technical programs. It doesn't at all talk about the academic programs or from that perspective. And when we get to the performance certificate, if we're going to be offering academic programs through PRTA, then I believe the performance certificate will have to be modified to include the academic side also, not just the professional technical side. And so I think that the real question is the purpose of PRTA. If the purpose of PRTA is, and it is the main purpose of PRTA, we know, was to provide professional technical programs to the students in Jim County. I think that's what's actually in the charter. I didn't repeat it in the performance certificate. Then these changes make a lot of sense, and they're very logical, and you know that makes a lot of sense to it. If the purpose of PRTA is to offer a comprehensive high school, that requires a different set of language and requirement. I mean, you know, it's really two different things. So I throw that out there because I think it relates to their performance certificate and what needs to be in it as we go forward, and what are we really renewing here? I mean, from that perspective. So, and that's why I picked 25. I think there's more pages with it throughout the document.
Question, Madam Chairman. When Mr. Rush, the exact wording that you're looking at. Because what I'm seeing here on D or on A, interest in attaining both high school diploma and career training designed to prepare them and all it goes. It's not necessarily saying that PRTA is going to provide that, but we're saying that students are interested in both receiving a high school diploma and some career technical education. So is there something it's saying in there specifically that
well, and honestly, I don't, it kind of alludes to it, but it doesn't say that. It does say that, yeah, interested in attaining both a high school diploma and career technical designed as, you know, and that clearly could be offered through the high school. And clearly what is happening, that's where they get their diploma from the high school. If you look at the website, it talks about being able to take a full high school program from getting a degree, high school diploma from Palo Technical. So I just think it's important that when we move forward and we put together our certificate that we're really defining it well. I'm not sure you'd have to change this language, or maybe it'd be clean it up, but I think when you get into all of the language beyond it, where it's talking about curriculum and all that, it's clearly a professional technical school.
okay?
I'm just looking for clarity because I actually, when we get into the performance certificate, it actually reads some very specific language of what we're supposed to do. I think we need to be careful to make sure we're not setting ourselves up for not following what we're supposed to be doing.
Do I have to think out loud?
Their legislature made it this way.
Yeah, well, I don't have a problem with that.
I spent 5 hours there this week, so I almost lost my mind.
Think out loud all the time. So, is there some language that you have in particular? Do you just want us to think about that as we go through the document?
Well, I think as we go through the document, if my assumption is, but I don't want to just make assumptions, so I think it's always better to throw them out on the table and talk about them, right? Okay. My assumption is that this is a professional technical academy, or professional technical charter school, and the development of the curriculum and all of those processes around the tax, I mean, all the processes around professional technical charter schools So if that is true, then I think we should just make sure that it focuses on professional technical charter schools. That would be my assumption, and just make sure that we're not.
I think that speaks to what I opened the meeting with, is that there's a number of very basic changes that we would like to make. However, we were advised that was not something that the board was interested in, and so I didn't know staff was. So that our board is certainly wanting to do those changes. If that's the direction of the board.
And I think on this particular one, it's a little ambiguous, but, you know, we're not offering any academic classes. That's not what we're planning on doing.
We try to merge together and do a word of the day to assist with academics and we've been working on some math issues as well, to try and supplement what's going on the academic side. Is that a direction you wish us to back off from?
No. A professional technical program should be also teaching in their programs the academic skills related to this, math and writing and those things. Absolutely, never back off on that, please. That's not what I'm saying at all.
Okay, sorry, I just wanted to make sure.
No, it's a good question though, because it does confuse people, and I, you know, but for going through high school, we learn our academic skills better in the professional technical area than we did in the academic area. If I may just say a little bit about teaching agriculture, I actually had a 7th and 8th grade course I taught, and the kids would come in and I would start talking about fractions and they'd just look at me as if I didn't know what I was talking about. What I realized is they didn't have a bad education in fractions. If I would hand them a piece of paper with, you know, figure these fractions out, they were better at that piece of paper than I was. What they didn't understand is that when I handed them a piece of wood and a tape measure, I was talking about fractions. They hadn't figured out. So you have to teach the academic aspects in those courses.
Madam Chairman, I have a question of the board, basically. As we go through here, and we find some areas that you might like fixed or something, it'd be nice if you could tell us, yeah, bring some more wording or not, so we have some direction. I don't know if we want to spend a lot of time talking about each single one unless you have specific wording. This meeting could go on a long time, which I guess that's fine. But for the interest of time, if you feel like this is a concern, just let us know. We'll come back with some language, or if you want a different process, let us know what that would be. Because maybe we can set some groundwork as we go through, and I'll throw it back on you. What do you want us to do?
Madam Chairman, if I may add, the biggest changes in the blue, those were mainly focused towards the 10 areas of concern. 4 of those areas were specifically defined within the needed to be changed within the charter, and by page, paragraph, and what it was. And so we went in and changed all of those to meet that instead of going through the whole thing. But it's going to be a work in progress. And we're looking at taking the next 2, 3, 4 years to try to clean everything up and get it back, you know, where everything matches up and everything's done. So the main focus and intent was to make sure we could put to bed the 10 areas of concern, because that was the last thing we had left to do with those 3 or 4 items off of that pertain to the charter.
So the 10 areas of concern were the changes that are in the blue, so we focus on the majority.
4 of them. The other ones were in different other places and other areas.
I'd like to add, Madam Chairman, that, you know, we've gone through these evaluations with the state previously over the years, and we've never been questioned about some of these things. So I think the state hasn't had any problems with this, but if there's between us, we need to get things straightened out. We're happy to do that. So I don't want to confuse the 2 issues, though, because we've gone through accreditation many years over and have good things. We've always complied. We've never had anything from the state come back and say, you know, you need to change this in your charter, you need to change that. So if it's wrong, then we will correct it.
But the state isn't the one that's you're chartered from a school district. So the state's not going to look at this charter and say change. It's between the district and the two of us. That's really where it is. And I'm just saying that on your website, it says we're offering, you can get a diploma, high school diploma from technical. So I just want to make sure we're not confusing ourselves as we go through this process. And if that's not the intent, then I think we're in the right direction. I think what the changes are.
Madam Chair, I don't think there's an intent, but to offer English and math, history, those subjects. I mean, that's the academic side of it. And I think that's just a clarification. It's just wording that needs to be, revised. I don't know whether it needs to be done in this document today, or as moving forward, we get together, continued work session to keep working on that. It's going to change almost yearly through the process.
I think for our board, we're looking for a reauthorization, and that was how we addressed. You had all come back with us on that, and there was a concern that was an impact and a concern before, or a limitation on the reauthorization, and so we've addressed those. If there are other issues that appear to inhibit us being reauthorized by you all, I think that was what we were hoping today for that conversation. Again, as I said at the beginning, I recognize I'm one that I like my comments are in the right spots, and I like a good document if I'm going to put my name to it. The bigness of the document has not been addressed because we were so focused on trying to make sure that we were going to have that reauthorization. Again, because if you saw all the blue, we were concerned that that would not be acceptable to the board. But if you'd like us to go back and do it in 2 steps, and we can look at the areas of concern and you want to reauthorize us, we would be open to that. And then, as Bob indicated, sit down and do some other work sessions. We would love to go through that page by page, word by word, if that's what you all are interested in, to clean it up.
Mr. Carter has a question.
I think that over the last 10 years that we've been doing this, I think there's some things that Pat and I've had discussions, things that we've talked about, and I think it was addressed earlier by Mr. Thane, that there's things that have changed or outdated and things like that. And the Emmett School District has a fairly new board. Some of you have been on a short amount of time, some just barely came on. And I just think that I agree that there's going to be things from both sides that we would like to see addressed or modified or changed, however you want to put it. And I'm just not sure the ESD board has had enough time to sit down with myself, staff, people like that, to talk about what are some of the things that we may want to address or change. We have had discussions in the past. There has been some discussions in the past, for example, of offering, I'm going to call them core type classes through PR2TA. So there has been some of those discussions, and not lately, but those are some things that we do need to talk about. So I just think that it would be important that we have a lot of new board members that need some, updating, some prior knowledge to what has been going on for 10 years. We've got new administrators, new board members, and so forth. So,
Chairman, I'd like to make a suggestion. I think Trustee Michelle.
You were trying to say share.
I still do answer to that, just not as much.
They still have 2 names.
That's right.
2 last names. Anyway, what we've been focusing on is 10 areas of concerns. So we'd personally like to focus on that because that's what our effort has been. If you have other concerns, if we could put that in a separate section, I mean, we can do it today if you want. But to me, we're trying to go for the reauthorization so we can kind of move ahead. We're open to revisit these issues in other areas. We don't have any problems with that. It seems like if we don't focus on those first, and it becomes a moving target, we're not sure what the end game is here. So if we could focus on those, that would be the preference of our board, because that's what we came prepared for. If you have other issues that you'd like us to address and the reasoning, we'd be more than happy to go back to our document, share with you what we think might work, or you can share with us what you think would work, and we could do a draft like we have now, show those changes, and then have another meeting for those changes. But in the interest of kind of focusing on what the issue was at hand, I would suggest that we focus on the changes that are made. And by all means, bring up others that we should talk about, but I'm not sure we should spend a lot of time today going, in great detail on what those are, unless there's something really obvious that we missed. So,
Just one question, is this document something that's locked in stone for next time we do? Yes. Or is it something we can work on as to go along, to the living document?
The charter?
Charter.
Yeah, we can work on the charter all the time and get it approved by you, and then it's sent to the State Board of Education.
It's something we can do in our quarterly meetings here, just moving back and forth, moving the ball forward.
Yep.
That seems like a logical approach. I don't know, Wayne, is that?
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I bring up this issue is because it does relate directly to the renewal and the performance certificates. And it sounds like we're fine.
But we don't want to be, yeah.
Because if the purpose is different, I mean, that's, if the purpose is different than what we're assuming it is, then our performance certificate will need to change. If it isn't, then there's probably only a couple of tweaks to the performance certificate. I mean, it's, if that makes sense, that's why I haven't talked about all these issues. That's why I picked a couple that I thought were really addressing. One is that the TAC was actually originally one of the 10 concerns. So that's really why I've tried to pick a couple, not the whole thing. But this issue is large enough that I think it's important that we make sure we're on the same page, and then we can fix it later in language. That's
Madam Chairman, in response to the suggested direction and the purpose of the meeting today, to address the 10 areas of concern that were given to the PERTA board and administration to address, which the documents come back with those concerns addressed, or your perception that they've been addressed. I guess I would ask, Madam Chairman, either our board or staff, do you feel that those 10 areas of concerns have been adequately addressed? And if not, then let's take those one by one and sort of talk about them, or have they been satisfactorily addressed? And if so, then I guess the question would be, can we go forward with the discussion of reauthorization, understanding there's going to be there's going to be continual discussion of the relationship and mission, and any time that there's a deviation from what you're currently doing now, or interest in doing another program that might be a little bit different than technical and maybe more academic, but there's going to be conversation about that. Everybody's going to be on the same page before it's implemented. So that'd be my suggestion, Madam Chair.
Wayne, do you have any of your list there? Are they involving the 10 areas of concern, or is it a totally different list?
So far, the 2 areas I brought up were part of the 10 areas of concern from that perspective. I think the rest of them, quite frankly, I went through them. I may not have done this perfectly because it is a pretty long document, but for example, the issue about whether you follow open meeting law in the back part, it said we don't follow it at one point, and the not's been taken out and solved that problem. I mean, so those types of concerns. I think if I was to look at the 10 area concerns, I think there's still probably 2 areas we need to talk about. And then probably not within the charter.
So do you want to talk about this now or no?
I'm sure. I'm your pleasure.
Okay. I think we need to address, if you have issues of the,
Well, Madam Chairman, I apologize. I want to make sure I understand. Are you, Mr. Rush, are you suggesting that the board could approve the charter that has been submitted absent the Scribner work that's going to be done, and then we after we do that, then we talk about a couple of the other concerns before we address the reauthorization question?
No, I don't think you actually can approve this charter when it's not, this isn't an action item thing. But secondly, there's a process this goes through. And the first process for a charter change is it gets sent to State Department of Education. They have a term for the evaluation. I'm sorry, I don't have it on the top of my head, but they do a certain kind of evaluation and say, yes, it doesn't violate any law, basically, that's what they say. And then they will send that back to us. At that point, the board can then look at it for approval. So I think on the charter, which we don't have to change necessarily to reauthorize. I mean, we have to March to reauthorize anyway, so we're not going to do that tonight. But on the charter, my recommendation would be that a lot of those changes to the charter get done. Maybe not all, but at that point, then send them to the State Department, then bring it back to the board for approval of the charter. But I'm not sure. I don't think you have to approve the charter. It'd be nice to reauthorize. Okay. But that's a board decision. If you say, no, we want to complete a charter before we reauthorize, then that would be a board decision. I think the board needs to decide how they want to do it. I'm not suggesting because there's a lot of work there.
So are you saying that, Joe? I can speak. So you're saying that we don't need this for the reauthorization?
Well, the board
Yes or no?
December had said they wanted the changes to the charter for
Right.
reauthorization. So that's a
So
board
that's-
decision, not a rush decision.
Madam Chair, I address you on that. Do we need to have, because that was stated, that the corrections in the charter need to be made for reauthorization? Correct? Is that correct?
for meetings?
Well, Madam Chair, my recollection was that this has been a year process, if not over a year process on express letters of areas of concern that have gone back and forth. And I think based upon the board's work in this, my belief and expectation would be that let's make sure those 10 areas of concerns are addressed prior to or in conjunction with the reauthorization. That I think would be what I would have expected. Everybody, I think, to be operating under that assumption.
I just want to make sure that everything that we're doing the right thing. So we need to make sure that the 10 areas have been addressed and fixed. And then, as I understand it, then we go ahead and approve the charter.
Well, Madam Chairman, I think it goes, as Mr. Rush said, there's a process
Of
of that, but I think it would be, we believe that the charter is up to date at this point is on the significant issues that we had expressed concern about. And that process in the state commences and we consider the reauthorization at our February meeting.
Madam Chairman. So when it comes to reauthorization, basically there's 2 or 3 issues you need to look at. One is if we're fiscally, accountable for the use of funds, and the other is if we're basically providing the programming that is agreed under the charter. As far as reauthorization, there's, according to state code, there's nothing you have to go through the charter. That's something the board has asked us to do, which is perfectly appropriate. And I think that's what we're doing tonight is going to the charter, seeing if there's, if we've addressed those concerns. If not, we'll come back and we'll address them. But this isn't part of anything we need to, according to state law. So you're running the ship. What do you want us to do with the charter? It's your decision.
Mr. Rush, you said, what I'm saying is that you had 2 items on your list that you want to look at on the areas of concern. So,
Right, yes.
So, yeah, let's do that.
So I think one of the ones we need to have a very honest conversation about this. And it is the area of concern one in the letter.
Now, this is on the areas of concern letter.
Yeah.
Concern 1, you said?
And it used to say it on page 24 in the document, but this document's changed, pages have changed some. I tried to match them up again and I got lost. So I did find it in there, but I think I can find the actual page number. As a matter of fact, I might find the page number. It's no. Yeah, maybe I can't, but it was to page 24. In the charter, it says one of the distinguishing features of Payette River Technical Academy is set forth in the charter on page 24 is PERTA is a partner. PERTA will work collaboratively with the Emmett Independent School District. And we gave some examples in the document about concerns about whether we're truly a partnership working together. And I think that is a concern that staff from the high school has, and just recent emails show that I don't think we are collaboratively working together or accomplishing what we need to do. So I think it's something we need to talk about to figure out how we're going to work together and collaboratively to make decisions. I think there's some challenges in this. I think one of the documents that was handed out was the Carl Perkins document. So in reality, the professional technical programs are the Emmett School District professional technical programs. We've given them to PERTA and said, run great programs, right?
Yeah.
So, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be sitting down and jointly working together to make decisions on what programs to offer, what are the needs of our students, how does it fit with our academic program. I mean, there's just a myriad of conversations that need to happen. And somehow we have to work collaboratively to begin doing that. And that's been a concern for some time.
Madam Chairman, I thought that's what we were working towards by having joint meetings, having 2 people on our board. Those are all things that we're trying to work together. So I thought we were heading down that right direction. So I'm kind of confused. I thought we were already making a good attempt to do that.
So maybe Wade or somebody from the high school can.
Pat and I have tried to work very hard together, but there are issues that come up that, and I'm not here to blame Pat or Kurt or anything like that, but for example, I had a letter that was put on my desk that basically, this was in October, 2 years ago, the sports medicine, that basically that just said, hey, as of November 1, we're dropping sports medicine, we're going to physical therapy, and da-da-da-da-da, and a change right then. And created a huge thing for us. We've had one meeting this year to talk about introduction of CTE programs at the middle school. And we have a wheel in place. The wheel is for all 9th graders so that a kid gets a sample of every one of their clusters so that when we ask them to pick a pathway, they can choose a pathway. A decision, we've had one meeting kind of talked about what direction we want to go, but no, I didn't take it that any decisions were made, but then there's an email saying we're dropping the wheel. So I think there's just some things like that there needs to be more collaboration and maybe I don't know, a better process. I don't know what the word is to making these types of decisions, because going back to sports medicine, Then the state this past year notified PRTA that they will not fund physical therapy. They will only fund a sports medicine. So we're trying to put back a sports medicine program and build it back up when it was at one time one of our fastest growing and biggest growing programs. So I think there's just some things like that that we have to work out. I think there's some topics tonight that are on the agenda that we have a mutual respect to disagree on. Yeah. You know, so there's just some things like that we feel there needs to be more discussion or a process that we go through.
So, if I could, Madam Chairman. This is very fascinating because when we address this first item of concern, collaboration is fairly vague. I mean, the basic things that we do together are quite collaborative. We're not competitive. That doesn't mean we're subservient. And one of the why that's kind of difficult is CTE requirements change according to industry standards fairly quickly, and the requirements from the state have changed. We're trying to line up with state requirements. So I could agree that there probably could be better communication, but I think the underlying foundation of a relationship is one of collaboration. So, you know, Mr. Goff could address specifically some of the things Mr. Carter raised, but I don't think we have to work together. We might not go lockstep exactly with what the Emmett School District maybe wants us to, but then we're kind of an independent board, so there is a little tension always there. And we're not sure what collaboration looks like, but we think generally we're being very collaborative. We work with their counselors. The Emmett School District counselors. We have classes that try to fit the needs of the students. So if there's something specifically about a process you want in place, that would be fine. But this vague notion that we're not collaborative enough is not acceptable, I think, to them.
So let's get to specific.
Okay.
When we get an email from PRTA that says we're dropping courses next year and we're going to move them to the middle school, and no decision's been made, we haven't had any real discussions internally on our side, that is not collaboration. And honestly, we probably are not going to move PRTA teachers to the middle school for other reasons, which happen to do with funding formulas and other things coming down the road. I mean, this is much more complicated, but it takes a lot of discussion and conversation of people sitting around saying, what is the best option for these kids that we need to do, you know, for next year? That is what we have been missing in collaboration. Dropping the medical program, what is it? CNA program, when we had kids enrolled in it this year. Those are times to sit down and have conversations. So what is our program we want for medical education for Emmett High School, offered by PR2TA Technical Academy? And what's the best way to fund that? And how do we do that? We ought to sit down and start having meetings about those types of things so that we can make decisions together. That is what we're talking about with collaboration. And those are two recent examples within just a few weeks, I mean, that we need to talk about. And I think one of the things I've tried to do since I've been here, and still believe we need to, and I did a presentation to the board, is we need to create, I'm going to call them PRTA clusters because I don't want to mix them up. PTE talks about pathways. I've used pathways in a different term. We need to sit down and create those so that every child in our district is making a decision that says, I want to be involved in the medical field or the mechanical field or whatever field it is. And we have designed our educational system collaboratively together, that our professional technical programs and our academic programs are working together so that kids can prepare for those fields when they go out to be college and career ready. And that's the type of collaboration. And it takes a lot of work, and I'll be honest with you, the academic teachers will push back some, and the professional technical teachers will push back some. It's the nature of we all love our own subject matter the best, right? I mean, that's the nature of it. And I don't say that in a negative, they're laughing at me. I don't say that in a negative way, it's the nature of people. But that's a good part of that, because they should push to get to the best solution for us. We had that in our book a few years ago. We dropped it because we weren't able to put the collaboration together. We cannot operate two separate high schools here. We have to operate one high school, collaboratively working together to get the job done. That's what I think we've got to do.
Madam Chairman? That's very helpful, because I think the examples that I've heard are class offerings. And so something specific like that, we can say, okay, if we're going to change a course or class offering, we need to have a discussion before that happens. And that's more than appropriate. So that type of specificity, I think we can say, okay, we probably haven't done the best job on that particular piece. Let's put a process in place. We need to get together before we're making a unilateral decision. That makes perfect sense to me. And I think it does members of the board, the board here. And if that's an area of weakness, I think we can fix that fairly easy. Things have happened in the past that we could, that's past. What can we do moving forward? And is the thing that you're seeing that we need to work on collaboration is class offerings? Is that the thing that's the biggest issue? Because I think that can be solved fairly simply. If there's other issues, well, bring them out. But
Madam Chairman, I appreciate the conversation. These are issues that we've heard and talked about before. I think it's how we talk about it. I think it's because I think the concern is very, very legitimate, and but I think we can talk about collaboration, talk about what that means, and, all day. I really think it's integration awareness. I think that the programs that are being offered, it sounds to me, an awareness of how they are integrated into the overall educational pathway system of the overall Emmett High School product. And it's the integration aspect on multiple issues that I think have resulted in some conflict. And so thinking of it in terms of how better to be integrated in the overall education plan for students, understanding that really is in the works in 8th grade perhaps, as that's being developed for students to make choices as early as 8th grade, maybe in some cases even 7th grade, that decisions on either side about academic offerings, technical offerings, need to be viewed from an integration awareness standpoint rather than a subservient or power control over that's our area, we get to do whatever we want, and vice versa.
I think that's exactly where our board's coming from. Exactly. Our view is that the students of Gem County, we want them to excel in every way, whether it's academic, career check. There's going to be some of our kiddos that are going to excel in both, and that is our goal. Is if it's on the career check side, we want them to sing and dance and excel and go and be the best that they possibly can be. And so I share that perspective of integrating and lift together. We're going to lift our students, and our community as a whole is going to be better.
I have a question, Madam Chairman, maybe Mr. Carter. Do you have a suggestion of how we should approach the changing of course offerings that would make it easier for you?
I don't know. Pat and I have had this discussion a lot, and there's talk about we're two different schools, and I think the challenge that we face is that Pat takes his portion very serious and says, I think we need to go this direction, and I'm kind of on the other end of it with the core and saying, well, we need to go this direction, and I'm not saying I'm wrong and he's right, or he's wrong and I'm right. I just see two programs that at times are kind of growing in different directions, and not that one is right or one is wrong. I've said that all along. It's just hard for us as two separate programs trying to meet our needs for both programs and still work always hand in hand. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it is. It's a tough one, and like I said, and I knew it was going to rear its ugly head again with the sports med, even though I've apologized up one side, down the other.
He has
3 years ago, and so and I said I would not like to ever hear it again, but here it is again. So I've taken the lead from the state CTE, and I gave as much notice as I had, going from sports med to physical therapy, because we would not receive funding if we kept going with sports med. Then they decided to go for physical therapy to exercise science, not even sports med.
And they is the state?
That's the state. So then we have to change it and title it in order to get the funding for it. So we're kind of at that beck and call. But as soon as I find out, then I try to let them know. As far as the freshman wheel, I never said anything about implementing. I said we're going to talk about doing the middle school if there's any possibility, maybe Carl Perkins funding or whatever. We'd have that conversation later on down the road. But as far as the freshman wheel, it is having issues with us being able to get completers on the other end. It's great for discovery, but there's not enough time sophomore through senior with all the other stuff the kids are doing. So we needed to have that the other 3 trimesters to be able to do it. So that was, what we came together with in our PLCs and what we decided that we would do. And then if we wanted to pursue, and we were going to have more meetings on this later on down the road. But I discussed this with Chris. I discussed it with Mr. Carter. This was early on in the year, probably around October. That this is the way we were looking. And this is the way we were going to focus on, was try to continue to do introductory courses freshman year, but not have the freshman wheel. So that being said, yes, I do think we definitely do need to work more collaboratively. Absolutely, I'm all in for it. But I want to be able to work collaboratively. I want to be able to have a seat at the table to be able to work together to try to find the best path, not saying this is the way it's done, this is the way it's always been done, and this is the way we're going to do it. And just to have that conversation. And I think you and I have had a lot of conversations recently.
I will tell you, Pat and I can go behind closed doors, and
Right.
Sometimes we don't always like each other, and sometimes we don't, but we always walk away with an understanding of where both of us is coming from. And listen, the wheel was Pat's idea, and we jumped on board. My counseling, myself, we thought it was a wonderful idea to bring. Now, we've had to tweak and change, and there's some things that PERTA would like us to do a little different, and at times that's been a challenge. And that's the process, I guess, that's hard, because I'm sure there's times Pat feels like they're not listening. There's times I feel like they're not listening. And so that's, and I'm not sitting here saying either one of us is wrong. It's just we're two vessels, sometimes moving different directions.
And, Madam Chairman, so because we do have more than 2 dominant personalities in the room, we have to get together and talk. I think these meetings that we're having together, 2 boards, what is this, the 3rd or 4th one over the last 9 years, most of them have been the last year and a half, I think is key to this. Because when we put our administrators out on an island, Mr. Rush, Mr. Carter, Mr. Goff, it puts them in a difficult situation when they don't know where the vision for the district or where PERTA is going. We need to create that vision together, and we can agree on it, and then we can give marching orders to administrators. So part of this discussion, the frustration that they have is a failure of leadership on our part. I feel. So I think this is really an important part of that collaboration piece. If there's something specific you want in the charter about collaboration, please let us know what it is. But you can see it's a little bit, you know, you can see they're
It's
talking
tough.
together. It's going to be a little rocky all the time because things are changing quickly. In some ways, we're on the top of a rocket ship in Idaho. Some things with dual credit and AP test and CT, and we're the way technology is going, there's some online opportunities for CTE to blow your socks off. We just had one today. And what it's going to do is give a lot of options to students. And so if we're focusing on our students and making sure that we've got to meet together occasionally to talk about some of this vision of where we're headed. And I think that's part of the problem we've had over the last few years is we haven't sat down and said, what are we trying to do academically? What are we trying to do CT side and actively help each other? So I think it's a challenge to two board chairs and members to let's have a discussion of where we're going and then make sure the charter fits that. In a way, this is the letter of the law here. If we know where we're going, we have a vision of where we're going, and this will needs to match up to our vision. The charter is not going to control our destiny. It's the feeling of working together that's important.
Madam Chairman, just another conversation around the room is that the main focus should be our students out there, what's best for them. You know, if they want to become a doctor, what pathway will possibly take, both technical and professional or academic, and talk about each one of the programs and how they get to those. And I'm sure it's a mix.
I think one of the challenges for me, if I may, is listening to Pat telling me about the changes from pathways to clusters and what this cluster is and what that, and that's difficult because I agree, we would love to be able to build those, I'm going to call them pathways because that's how we started, those pathways to help what's best for our kids. But it's hard because, yes, he's facing changes. Even this year for us, we started school and they changed the codes on every course with about a week before school. And so it's just these changes come in and it's just a continually tough way to do that. And I don't know. I don't know if we could tell the state, wait a minute, you can't come in the middle of the year and drop sports medicine and at least give us through the end of the year. I don't know if that's a possibility or not. You know, that.
Well, some of those things, Madam Chairman, come from federal level too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Carl Perkins money and different things. So we have to be a little flexible or could change for money, I guess, do that too. But, part of the problem is I think at the post-secondary level, some of those courses didn't start until the master's level. So there really wasn't a transition from high school to post-secondary until you get to the master's level. And so it just requires us to be flexible. But there again, I think the vision of where we're going should be the overriding concern. And hopefully we'll have time to get to what that vision could look like, because we have some ideas that have popped up at the state level and some vendors that have come up that we'd like to share if we get that far today.
And I agree that we need to be flexible. Lots of things come at us, lots of different ways. The issue is how you get to that conversation. Whichever subject you want to change. We want to change this program from that perspective. You sit down and you start having a conversation. You might say, well, the State Department's telling us this stuff. Well, I don't matter. CTE. If I say PTE, it's just because I'm old. CTE. The CTE may be saying this. What I found over the years, though, is that if a group of people sit down into their office and say, okay, really explain to me what you're saying here, and when do we have to move and that stuff, you often get a different story than what they tell you in the email that just came out. But I think we can do that collaboratively, you know, rather than just have Matt go there, we can have a couple of us go sit down and say, so what are the changes we need to look at in health occupations for the next year, and how do we just make that thing work for us? There is a tension in professional career technical education that many of us in the high school end of this thing probably don't agree with enough as much. For technical education, especially from the secondary or post-secondary level, should be about, I'm preparing you for that job. But at the secondary level, it should more be about, I'm preparing you for a job, but here are all the other exit points that might be a part of that pathway for the rest of your life. Because I don't want to prepare people just to be a CNA. That ain't a great life. But it isn't a bad stepping stone if I wanted to be a nurse or a doctor or something else down the road. In other words, so you have to design these programs with a larger and broader look at for kids, not just a narrow look for kids. And it's a tension between post-secondary, this is a post-secondary man here, and secondary, and what you can do and how you can prepare kids. And I'm truly not a believer in the European model. I think once a kid picks something in 9th grade, they ought to be able to change it in 10th grade, and then they ought to be able to change it in 11th grade. I've said all along, our job is to create the best educational system we can, and it's the kid's job to go screw it up so they can be successful in their path when they go through our process. And so that's what I mean by collaboration, is that when we run into a problem, we sit down and we say, okay, we need to start working on it. Let's get a group of teachers or whoever's the experts we need together in the classroom to go to work for. And
Mr. Chairman, 2 points. One I'd like to clarify. We're going to drop the CNA program, but the students that signed up are taking CNA.
Yeah, we said we'd pay for anyone that were.
Basically, the cost went from $300 up to about
$425 to
$850. So, PERT is funding that.
Right.
Can I give you a specific example on that, though? Because I'm a numbers guy. Take $850, multiply it by 20 students, a full class of kids that we would get through a CNA program. The number is what? About $17,000. You're spending more per student, per classes, to offer classes in your classrooms right now than that CNA program would cost you in College of Western Idaho. So you need to, that's why it takes a collaborative effort, because you're going to get some dumb guy like me that likes spreadsheets and puts all these on spreadsheets all the time and says, wait a minute, financially, if we have 20 kids in there and that's going to give us a support unit of $90,000 and we can offer them a course for 20, we just made money on that course. We ought to be offering that. I mean, but that's why collaboration makes a lot of sense, because trust me, I'm going to look at it the wrong way too, because I'm going to look at it from that perspective. And Pat may say, oh, wait a minute, but you got to think of, oh, you're right, I haven't thought about that. That's why we need to say, well, rather than say, well, we're dropping CNA, let's get together and have a conversation about health occupation programs and how we can make it fit and what partners and those types of things, because there's a bunch of people working together is smarter than one of us sitting together, any of us. That's true.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. I appreciate that. That's absolutely true. When you get 2 or 3 people together, 5 or 6 or 10, as long as they're new ideas, you do come up with better ideas. But I just wanted to make sure that people knew that we still have a CNA program.
Right.
It wasn't dropped. The other thing, as far as our perspective on the PERTA board, I think I can speak for them and our administrator. Just saying we need to be more collaborative isn't helpful. If you have something specific that you want in the charter, let us know. But because I think we're visiting and we can probably do better, and it'll always be an ongoing. But if there's something specific you want, tell us. If not, I just move on to the next point.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I'd just like to ask a question because I don't know how the mechanics and the flow actually work. So probably a question for Mr. Carter and Mr. Goff, and I see that Mr. Roper's in the room. So, and I apologize if there's any other counselors in the room that I'm not recognizing, but how is the collaboration over the last 9-10 years you're speaking to? Are the counselors at the center? I see, yeah, so I see like your high school counselors on campus kind of being the control center of all that and the simplistic forms. When we were talking about career clusters and the changing in CTE and then the things you're trying to offer in the educational program.
Why don't you tell them about our last 2 years of pathway meetings?
Yeah. It's been, yeah. I mean, the amount of changes we've made and the amount of stuff that we've been through, And it's like a moving target. We're trying to reach as many kids as we possibly can, trying to help as many kids as we can. And I know Chris has a nightmare of a job. I go up there and look at the grid that he has up there and moving stuff around and seeing how we're going to schedule everything. I wouldn't wish that on the worst enemy. But that being said, we're dealt with the cards we have, and so we need to get in there and have more conversations on it. But I also want to, just want to make sure that people understand that, career technical education is coming off the lips of almost everybody, from federal level to state level to local, and it's a big impact on it. Back to the point where industry's starting to scream and cry out because they need students, they need kids, they need welders, they need whatever might be out there. And so I'm getting all this, tallied up together, and I appreciate, trying to get everything going for post-secondary, get it on post-secondary and going. But if we can offer certifications at the high school level, I think it's also conducive to offer certifications at the high school level. They get right out and start working, and then that employer pays for their schooling. That way you have zero debt to your name. It's a good return on investment. Very good return on investment for the student.
Which is kind of like our dual credits.
Absolutely.
For those kids that want to go into college, we're providing, through the state funding, we're providing them opportunities to get rid of college courses that they would have to pay double or triple the cost at that. But let me go back for a second. I run a survey every year, My College Option. It goes back, interviews all of our freshmen, sophomores, and juniors, comes back and says, okay, here's the #1 field your kids express, or here's the top 10 fields that your kids express. That's kind of how we brought sports medicine in. That was our one thing that kept popping up on our survey, yearly survey. This is before Pat's time, and that's when we started working towards implementing that and so forth. And so there's surveys and other things that are going on in interest that our kids are expressing to us and that we're seeing. And yes, the certifications that their kids are critical, because we know not every kid's going to go out. For the last 5 years, 100% of our seniors have applied for a post-secondary institution of some type. That could be a trade school, that could be an apprenticeship, that could be a 4-year college, whatever. So we know that there's going to be needs across the board. So does that answer?
Yeah, thank you. And I think I just echo Chairman Thane's direction, is that if there are suggested constructive changes as to how we can collaborate together, because obviously you have a vested interest in what you do and he doesn't, and how those mesh, and we have to be fluid and all that. So I just wanted to make sure the counselors are at the center of it, because kind of the liaison between the schools and the clusters.
Mr. Roper, are you at the center of it?
It's downstream, but still in the center.
Yeah, I have a question about that, because I can't imagine doing the schedules of our kids, so. No, so, at the beginning of spring or summer, do the counselors and PR2TA people and Mr. Carter get together and figure out what classes are available?
The process is.
What are gonna be offered?
Yeah, we've already. I start early in the year. I send out all the teachers, PR2TA, at the high school. Any class changes they're looking for. Any changes to the handbook, any descriptions of their classes, any of that type of stuff. They get it back to me. And that just happened. I've gotten them all. Then I start working on the new handbook. And once that's in and done, I can't change the handbook after that. So any changes that come after that are going to be reflected in the next year's handbook. And that does happen from time to time. The class will get added, it's not in the handbook. But then we do the registration with all the students, and that's usually March into April. We start with the freedoms coming up, and then work through all the classes. And then based on those numbers, we know how many sections of each class we need. So if we have 120 kids signed up for Algebra 1, there'd be more than that. If that's something, then if we base it on 25 students per classroom, we know we need 5 sections of Algebra 1A. And then
once we get all that figured out, I know how many sections of each class we need. Work with the department head, we know which teacher is going to teach which classes on the Emmett High School side. We don't want them to take it based on their area of expertise that they teach in. And then we build a schedule based on that, on how many sections of each class we're going to need. And then we go forward.
I'm going to throw in a little bit on that too, that one thing that's been very helpful for us when we build that process is the PRTA teachers a lot of times will send us saying, I would like this in the first trimester, I'd like this first period, this second period, I'd like prep third period, I'd like this fourth period, and so forth. Because, for example, when Mr. Dean was in here, he could take two of his courses that were similar, but a little bit different, and he would offer them in the same hour so that more kids could take them.
And make them
Right.
like, you know, I think zoology, what we're saying, his fish and wildlife course, he offers those the same period. So we can offer it twice during the year, that way, keep those courses twice in the year, and it can split up, you know, a little more flexibility for the kids in their schedule. You know, so if we just offer each one of those once a year, a lot of kids want to take back the courses like that, gives us more flexibility. Robert does courses as well. Otto's been doing it with Otto 2 and 3, and take them back together so we can offer, you know, twice a day. So we don't have to get all the Otto 3 kids in one period, and we have two choices. So that type of flexibility helps a lot with this. It gives the kids more options on the classes they can actually take.
Madam Chairman, I'm going to work off of what Pat was talking about. If you listen to the governor's speech about technical education growing, and the number of students are coming in our programs, we have that problem right now. Our aid department has to split himself up, being 3 teachers at the same time, because we only have so many welding stations. Okay, so it's supposed to be up in the lab with them, and he's supposed to be in here with the rest of the ag students trying to cover those other subjects he's doing. We're asking our teachers to do over and above what they're required to do because of our semester, trimester, whatever. It doesn't align with colleges. It's another whole issue. But the other key issue is we don't have the facilities to handle the amount of students that we can take in. We had, what, 35 students here in ag a while back? I don't know how that teacher functions that way. I taught technically. And you have too. You know, you want to do what he's doing right now? It's not fair to him. So our boards need to work very closely together and help one another rather than taking shots at one another. We have got to figure out what's going to help the students get through these programs without overloading our students, without overloading our classrooms. Because right now, those teachers, they come in here and the room's full of students. He's going, wait a minute. I told them I only wanted 25 and 30 students, and I've got 35. What do I do with the other 35? Send them outside? So this problem is a lot bigger than them and us. We have to start looking at what we're doing for our students, scheduling wise, and I appreciate what you're saying, man. That's an awesome task that it isn't really doable. Because you're asking a teacher to teach this level, this level, this level, and this level. Would you like to do that in math?
We're not asking them.
No.
Dave, we're not asking them. I'll use Mr. Dean. Mr. Dean came to us and said, listen, this is what I'm willing to do. I want as many kids to go through my program. And if I only offer one class, one period, I will not get as many kids to go through my program. And I am willing to do these things. And I agree.
Teacher. We have an awesome teacher that'll do that.
Right. And
is that fair to him?
Listen, I understand. I'm not saying it's fair, but what I'm saying is, as a teacher, he's willing to make that commitment. He's telling us that.
That's why we have the best teachers in the state right here.
I agree.
We're very proud of it.
I agree.
We've got award-winning students, and we've got great programs, but we need to start working together as boards.
I agree. But we also, scheduling is not something you do in one afternoon. Scheduling takes months. And when I say months, Mr. Roper and I are here during the summer on our time, trying to still build schedules to meet the needs of as many kids to get into as many programs as possible. But I'll give you one example. We have roughly at one time, and I don't know exactly how many we had, but 40 some what we call singletons. A singleton is a class that we offer one time. Spread that over 15 periods. You're going to have overlap and tough decisions for kids. And I agree 100%. We've got the best teachers, both Pay at River and Emmett High School. And they are willing to make the sacrifices to do whatever they have to do to give these kids the best education possible. I would love to have, and I would bet Pat would love to have, bigger facilities and 10 more teachers, and I would love to have bigger facilities and 20 more teachers.
How do we get there?
Write me a check. I think that's a challenge that every school faces, but I agree it's a challenge that we need to look at and continue. And I think we're kind of doing that. We've got some people from our facilities committee here tonight that have served on that, and these are some of the things that we're talking about. But I agree, it's tough, and we're asking a lot.
Madam Chairman, I had something. You asked about specific collaboration. One of the, I'm kind of new to this whole thing. I've been principal now for 2 years, but first year, I had some great ideas that I wanted to implement in my school, change up some classes and do some things like that. But as I attempted to do some of those things, Wayne came and said, "Well, wait a minute. What about this? What about this?" Because it affects a lot of different things. So when you talk about what does maybe some of that increase in collaboration look like, I think we need to make sure that there's some processes, some procedures in place. We do get together and talk, but when I want to put a new course in place at the middle school, there's a process. I need to have that course request submitted so that we can review it at the district level, so we can see how it fits in with the high school courses, how it fits in with their elementary courses, and that whole thing. So, if we have a process in place that says, okay, when we're making these changes, let's set up that timeline. Let's schedule those meetings so that collaboration does happen, and we don't end up in a situation where it's, oh, we need to change this because of that and this, and there's not time for that discussion to happen. So I think when we talk about collaboration, I think it's important we put that process in place.
Madam Chairman, I think that's a good suggestion. Number one, we just got to get the process put in place so we can follow it. And number two, if you look down on our, further down, we talked about career counselors. We're just talking about, helping our counselors by hiring a counselor to assist in the process. That's another thing that Bert is looking at to help the school district. I'm talking the full side of my mouth here. That's next.
That would be greatly appreciated.
And it was a positive, it wasn't to supplement, and it was, we were.
Chris loves spending hours here, so he might fight it, but.
He's a great man, and I adore him and his family, and I want him to be able to spend time with Debbie and the family, and if we're able to assist him financially and something like that, that is our desire. And
I feel guilty when we're here in the summer, and he knows that, but he's willing to do that. And just like myself, I'm willing to be here and spend hours and hours doing those things to provide our students. I'm going to tell you right now, I do not believe there is another high school our size in the state of Idaho that offers as much as we do to their students. I truly believe that. And I talk to a lot of schools. And we have schools that are coming to us on a regular basis now wanting to sit down and say, okay, explain how you're doing this program. Explain why you're doing this. Explain this. So
well, I think that the collaboration is getting better, in my opinion. When we went to the ISBA convention, both boards sat down together and shared and communicated, and if something comes up with classes and changes at the state in the middle of the year, I think we need to jump on it and, you know, you don't wanna talk to the person, but you just put the student first and communicate with, and get on board and communicate with the person, with people, as a team.
Madam Chairman, and that's one of the biggest things, is when they did make that change, a lot of the courses were exactly the same. But the whole process changed from sports med to physical therapy, even though they still did physical and anatomy, you know, physiology and anatomy, and they still did medical terminology, and they still did all the same things. But it just changed, then it changed back to exercise science. So I asked me when they're gonna come up with the final one. They're still throwing darts to the dartboard. But once they finally get to one set in stone, I mean, we still follow the same thing. I mean, we could call it sports medicine and align ourselves with exactly what we're doing with that path. It's just where the funding's so, but I appreciate that.
And Madam Chairman, I'd suggest our board that one process that we could do is when we have a board meeting, and at the end of the board meeting, we have a little section that says, what do we need to share with them at school district board? Now, we're going to have a couple of members in the school district board, but we ought to say specifically what those are, and then have them share. And then if you feel like you need to follow up or you have some input, but that's one thing that we could do. At the end of every school board meeting, what should we share with the school district board? Well, they're bored. I don't tell them what to do.
Pat, you're always invited in the summer too to come to the schedule with us.
I'm usually rebuilding network, so I'm free of it. I will.
Madam Chairman, I think we need to, there's another topic you said needed to be addressed, Wayne, another area of concern besides collaboration. What I'm getting at is what do we need to do, what is the further that you need to do to move forward with the reauthorization?
So I think there's a couple things in the performance certificate we need to talk about. This area I'm struggling with talking about. Quite frankly, I have enjoyed the past 3 years not coming to 2 board meetings. So, but I think the change and the process that and it's different because I see it as blue lined in here now. So that's from that, of taking any administrative person off the PRTA board or not having a process for that is part of the reason we're not collaborating. I think that I decided a couple, 3 years ago that it was, if I was the problem, we would put somebody else on it. So I had Jay Helmut come to the board. I get to designee, so that was kind of nice. And I've enjoyed not having more board meetings. Not that I don't enjoy the meetings, it's just I have plenty of meetings and I don't want to go anymore. But I think this is one of the things that, and if you go back and actually read the lawyer's original letters on all of this, his concern with board members on the board, I think the law allows us to do whatever we want because it has this wonderful line underneath that says, or whatever your charter says, and your charter can define that very clearly. I think the law allows us to do a lot of flexibility within our charter. But I think that concern.
We do have open meetings. You can attend anytime you choose.
I appreciate that I can do that. I think though that this is the only professional technical school, the only professional technical program in the state of Idaho that doesn't have the district administration as a part of the board process of the professional. All the other charter schools have those people on. West Ada has the wife of our ag teacher on theirs, on their 2 professional technical charters. The one that just opened in southeastern Idaho has all 3 superintendents on it. The one from Twin Falls area, all the superintendents on it. I think it's important that those people are at the table because of the decision-making process that needs to go. It is not. This can't be separate. It has to be one school working together because there's only one set of kids. Honestly, the kids don't give a rip. They walk from that building to this building. They don't really care about this group, to be honest with you. I appreciate it, but they don't really care. They just want class. They want to go to school. And they want to get their diploma and go on with their life.
Can I tell a story?
Sure.
So there's a book called Made to Stick, I think. There's two brothers who wrote two books, and I can never remember which stories from which book. But the story was about, it used to be when medical doctors did the residency programs, they'd keep them up late at night, 18, 20, 30-hour stretches at a time. And they came to realize that this wasn't the best for medical students or for patients because they made more mistakes. So what they started trying to different residency programs, which are usually often housed in hospitals, tried to make a change. And one hospital that was really wanted to make a change to shorten hours of residencies. That's what the hospital wanted to do, but they weren't successful at getting it done. But the other hospital that actually had a very small minority, or a smaller group of doctors that wanted to make that residency change, and there were more doctors that had gone through the old system, and they were successful in making the change. So what was the difference? The difference was that the innovators were able to get together and brainstorm and create an idea that made sense without outside opposition. So the one hospital brought everybody in all at once, and then they had the naysayers in the room at the same time. So they're never able to get anywhere. The other group, until they had a solid idea together, didn't share that idea with the greater group of doctors. And so what we were finding, Mr. Rush, and I appreciate your knowledge, but we're finding that we weren't able to do that innovative thinking in a group of like-minded folks.
I'm sorry. I've read another book on Gantry Brothers. But it was Made to Stick. I've got that one and then another one we wrote. But they've got tenets of success. And it's not all successful businesses. What makes all these businesses successful? One of the biggest things they call it, one of those tenets was making sure you have dissent at the table. Because don't do great decisions without dissent. You've got to bring all people involved to have that discussion and have somebody say, you know what, I don't think that's a good idea, and here's why. Otherwise, everyone just adheres to some idea that they all think is great without missing that detail that the dissenter is going to point out. So I think there's value in both. Well, I also think collaboration is not just communication, it's joint decision making.
And I agree with that. The question is, when do you bring the dissent in? The other points is you. And that's the question.
Sorry, I missed your
Identify yourself so we know who you are.
So it's a matter of timing. I agree. If people just have the same thinking and the same room, you're not going to really go anywhere. But when you have an innovative idea, you have to create it, and then you bring people in to say, what's wrong with your idea? And it was a timing issue. We didn't have a chance to really create some of the. Anyway, that's why we went the direction we did.
Mr. Alexander.
Could I say something?
Yes.
I'm just going to say a little something, and I'm going to leave. I don't see anybody here that I don't believe is a problem that we need to get rid of. I think everyone that I've seen, and some of you folks have been around a long time, longer than me, but in 10 years, Nickram, before Carter, did some good things as my principal in the high school. And there's some things that I disagree with him. And the same thing about Wade Carter. And I've seen this thing from outside many times, and from both sides, from people, from professional teachers, from board members. I've heard things. And to me, as a taxpayer and a parent, we've gotten, and I think it's gotten better recently, but it seems to me there are such personal problems in our past that as I look at these groups right now, I say, what I'm thinking is, you people need to learn how to say yes. You need to figure out how to make this work. If you're sitting there and you listen to one of these people at these tables speak, and you've got yourself a little issue right there, you're the problem, I believe.
I'm not saying you have to go away, but you have to fix that. You have to go, we can get this done. We can't keep replacing you people until we get, I personally, as a taxpayer, if this thing won't work, this group's got to go away, because that is my board. That is my lead educator in this district. As a taxpayer, this group would have to be separated, go away. I totally believe that would be less for our children. I do not want that group to go away, but you guys have to work together and make this work. And I think the way if I was sitting there, I'd come to the table, we're going to make everything work. And when he says something to me that is just, I can't believe that's not going to work at Emmett High School, you better figure out how to make it work. But you can't be standing over here going, you know, there's nothing more important than CTE. Bull crap. There's nothing more important than English. Bull crap. Everything that you folks bring to the table is important. And so I would just hope that we can start, you know, and I know personal stuff is tough, right? We've all been there, right? And occasionally maybe somebody needs to walk up to somebody and say, hey, I'm sorry for some of the things that have happened. Because my job is not to be your best friend someday. It's to serve, you know, 2,500, 3,000 children. And that's all of our jobs, right? I'm not the sweetest guy in this high school. I'll tell you that right now. But sometimes I think to myself, hey, you got to get a little softer with this kid. You know, this kid just can't see who you are. But it's not, I can't be that person every day. That's not me. I see value when we are who we are. I don't want you to be soft when you're aggressive and I want to get what I want. I want to tell Wade, I don't want to do it that way. But I also then want you to go, hey, we got to make this thing work. Wade, what do you see in here? I know you know what I want now. How do we make this work? And I just think I know a lot of that stuff it's water under the bridge. So I hope we can get past that history and just go in the right direction. And I don't even know what that is. I mean, it's complicated. I get that. Thank you for being here and serving.
Thanks. Yeah, so I guess on that, or any kind of negotiations, compromise is always kind of the word or the rule of the day. So yeah, it's bigger than self, obviously. How did it work when? Well, I don't even know where Dan figures in the assistant superintendent.
Well, Jay Hummel was here. Dan's taken over.
I know
the
that
position.
Dan's
Taken over the position, but the change is to eliminate superintendent or his designee. So, I mean, designee could be a council. I'm sure he looked at me with evil eyes. So.
Mr. Baumann?
Yeah, I just want to know what is the issue, what is the problem besides the timing of the ideas for having a representative of the district be a part of the board? Specifically.
No, I was specific. So there's times where we do brainstorming and we're trying to figure out a way to go. And it's kind of a critical time where you're wrestling with ideas you don't know what you're trying to form.
There's time where the board does brainstorming and time when teachers do PLC, but we can't always pick and choose who's at the table.
So, Madam Chairman, I don't think if you want to ruminate on this for a little bit or something, there are some other specific things about the performance certificate I think we need to talk about, so we can. And I'm cognizant of the time, about 5:30 East, 5:35 right now.
Yes.
Somewhere in there, and at 6 o'clock we're done. So, although if I stayed in here, I'd save a lot of money tonight, I'm afraid. So maybe that's a good idea.
What items do you want to talk about on the?
Performance certificate. If you look at page 3, I want you to understand the importance of this certificate first, because I think all of us need to understand it. So I'm just going to read it to you. Forgive me for reading, but page 3, section 4, authorizer's role and responsibilities, A, charter school performance framework. The charter school performance framework is attached and incorporated into this agreement. So what they're talking about is this appendix B. Okay, that's what that is. So when it says that, the performance framework shall be used to evaluate the school's academic, financial, and operational performance, and shall supersede and replace any and all assessment, measures, educational goals and objectives, financial operations matrix, and operational performance matrix set forth in the charter. So it actually supersedes all that stuff, what we put in here, and not explicitly incorporated into the performance agreement. The specific terms of the requirements of the performance agreement shall include any required indicators, measures, matrix, and targets as determined by the authorizers, and authorizers shall be binding to the school. So I say that because I want you to be very careful as we look at this. And I just think you need to understand this is a binding document that drives us. When I look at the performance framework right now, I don't have much problems with what's here. My question for our board will be, should we be adding anything to it in these other areas of financial or operational performance? Maybe that's a discussion the board ought to have. So that's one question for the board. The second one is, and I think it's on the first section, which is the CTE, CTS performance measures. We have a measure that we look at. So, for example, technical skills assessment, we want to be above the state average. So we have a measure. The advanced ed performance domains, there's no measure. In the past, we picked 2.5, that you had to score 2.5 or above. Whether that was the right number or not, I won't debate because it probably wasn't, but it was a number, at least we had that. But we don't have this in this piece right now. And I did not print this because it's lots of paper. I printed one copy. Maybe I printed two. There are two copies. This is the advanced ed performance standards. You're listing 3 items here, but each item has standard 1.1 on a page, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. So we may want to have, as a part of this performance standard, just say you need to reach a certain area or a certain standard, or you need to score 2.5 or above on these standards, or
you need to become accredited.
I haven't been through the new training part of it.
Or you become accredited as a charter or as a school in the state of Idaho. Because if the state believes our accreditation passes, then they figure we're good, and that could be one of the performances. But it's up to the board to delineate how you want to do it. I just threw those in there as the domains because that sets us, because we have to do that with the state also. So it might as well be.
I have no problems with this being a part of it. I just want our board to understand, and we might want to have some standards around it. And because we're not breaking out those other areas, these performance standards do kind of start breaking out some of those other areas. For example, when you get to standard 3, the system provides access to information resources and materials to support the program. Attracts and retains qualified personnel. I mean, those are kind of the standards. So it may not, I would not recommend it just be accredited. I think you ought to be able to meet, because there's some areas where you may be weak in that you need to focus on and improve. Hopefully that's what this whole, actually, that's what this whole process is about, a continuous improvement process, not just, boy, I got to be accredited or not accredited. It's, oh, here's areas I need to work on. Here's areas I ought to go out and celebrate.
It's like an evaluation.
Yeah. So, but I think that's a board decision. Do we want to add to this framework a standard? And before we picked a number, I don't know if that's even appropriate anymore, because they've changed these since the last round. Do they still do a number?
I don't know. The process has completely changed from 5 years ago when we did it. So I know that.
We might need to talk to somebody who knows the process.
And I could call him.
Bring it in. And that's a question for our board. Did I make it clear what I'm thinking there?
And advanced ed never leaves you with nothing to do. Advanced ed is going to, it doesn't matter what school, who you are, how you do, they are going to say, these are areas you need to work on. That is part of what they do. So,
Madam Chairman, I might try to reinforce what Superintendent Rush said. I think he's saying, rather than just you're qualified, if advanced ed says you're qualified to teach, if there's different areas that maybe, at the very least, if you're weak in them, you should work on them, or you should have, we don't know what the numbering system is, or the lettering system, but some recognition that if there's areas of weakness that need to be improved, or I think that's what Mr. Rush is talking about.
So we'd add another section of this saying that if there's areas of weakness, we need to improve it.
Well, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think that's the type of thing he's talking about.
Some rating for it. Yeah. And you might make it as simple as you're just stating it right there. Areas of weakness, we improve. I mean,
Which is, if we have, like, let's just hypothetically say you get 1 with 1.3, that's going to be written up as the ending document from the advanced ed team to say these are the areas you need to work on. We're already going to be given that. And so that's why we can throw that in there, for the next time, show you what we got and what we're working to improve.
And I think that would be more than appropriate to,
Bob, did you want to work on the language for that and distribute it to both boards?
I would say, have somebody qualified to do that, it's going to be very simple.
Under full confessions, I am supposed to go through a training with advanced ed here that's been sitting on my computer for about a month that I haven't touched. But I might be able to go find some answers for us there. And I know Wade can call the people that are experts.
And I'm actually going through my review in a couple weeks for our 5-year accreditation. I think Pat's is in a little over a month.
February 19th and 20th.
Oh, okay, so he's just like,
Yeah.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, I think somebody needs to look at it that's going through the process so they understand it, so we're creating the right kind of language. Because I couldn't do it. I don't think any of us could do it. But
Somebody needs to bring a recommendation to the board.
Right, okay. Other than that, I mean, I just wanted our board to understand what they're approving here, and that's really an important piece to this.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to thank Mr. Rush for taking the time to go through this and his expertise on the law and some of the things to look at. It's just not rubber stamped. I think his input has been very valuable. And I think he's laid out basically your decision. And all we're asking is tell us what you want us to do to, we might not agree with everything, but I guess you don't have to renew the charter either. Yeah.
Madam Chairman, what's our timeline on accomplishing this task?
Your timeline is we need to do this by March 15th.
So our next meeting.
So we could do it at the March meeting and approve the fees. May I give you a suggestion? I would suggest that a couple of the changes in it's actually one major section on the technical advisory committee. I think it's not a major section.
Oh, that is major.
But I think that needs to be correct and done right. And then I think I would propose to our board that we say, yes, those changes are appropriate for us to be able to make the decision to move forward. I'm making a suggestion here, so please argue with me, like that. And then that we make some adjustments to the performance framework. I always forget what they call that thing, performance framework. I don't think we're talking huge adjustments, but just setting a standard. To the performance framework and move forward if the board is comfortable doing those things that way. And either at the February meeting or the March meeting, we would be ready to have those done because we could then approve some of those things.
So the performance framework, because you want to take those 3 domains out and then just say,
No.
You want to say we will work on the areas that we are low in.
I would leave it just right here, and I would add a paragraph, that you have to meet a standard within the domains. And I don't know what the wording should be on that yet, so it might be that you reach on the standard within the domain some point.
But any domain that was less than should be corrected.
Yeah.
in a domain that was less than.
So
I don't know the
You need
language
to
of
go
it.
through.
So let's have these two people go do some learning.
Mr. Rush, as you know, Advanced Ed tells you exactly what you need to work on. They break it down on what level you need to work it on when they give you those reports back. And so it's basically laid out for you after they come and review
But
your
the
skills.
expectation should be
Yeah.
that you should see it being corrected.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
want
they'll
to
tell
see
you what you need to correct. They'll lay it out.
Yeah, that it would
Yeah,
be
fourth by
correct.
Advanced Ed.
Yeah.
But let's let you guys talk with Advanced Ed people or somebody and just make sure we get it right.
That would be the only thing I would recommend also, because the process is completely different than it was 5 years ago. I've had teachers working on it. The question is, and so I'm not even sure I understand how they're gonna rate us. I'm not even sure how they're gonna, what kind of a scoring system they're gonna use or anything like that. So Pat and I can definitely work on it. I honestly would invite Pat to come in. I know his is a week later, but he's more than welcome to come in and sit on it, so at least he's getting an idea of, because I have called and said, I don't understand how you're gonna grade us, and they are not real helpful. So it is a completely different process than 5 years ago.
And is that in 2 weeks?
Ours is the 13th and 14th, his is the 19th.
So we could have it done for the March board meeting.
Yes. Yeah, yes, I don't see why we couldn't. At least we'll have a better idea, don't you agree?
Oh, yeah, I can,
Yeah.
well, I can call also, and just ask him how we are. But I think, I mean, just to say, something along the lines of we'll work on the areas that she's put forth by the Advanced Ed team to better the areas of emphasis or something at that point. Because then that would be the areas that they see we're low in, then we always work on that, which we've done over the last 5 years.
Yeah. The one
So,
Yeah, I think some language. Why don't you work on it and then give us some language and maybe write it down.
Of course, then, as our efforts, and we can report to the school district board what we've been doing in those areas. So would we call it? What we're doing.
If I boil it down to, we should have a measure.
Yeah.
That's all I'm really saying. If you don't have a measure on that part, we need to have a measure.
Well, yeah.
Pretty simple, how we measure it.
Wayne, they have measures.
Oh, I know they do, but.
So the measure would be,
Yeah.
the expectation should be that measure, because on the last one that was done, we made some real dynamic changes.
And you can have a copy of this.
Oh, we've got it.
That's fine.
Yeah. But I think that, with the measures that are in there, the expectation should be that those measures are shown to be, if not perfect, pretty damn close.
Sure.
Yeah.
You betcha.
We expect that from our teachers.
I mean, I could report on a couple things. Going through the website, you need to have time to get in. Chairman Harris has asked me, I asked. She said it's okay. I don't know. Some of these other items.
Go ahead, Mr. Carter.
Can I ask a quick question, Senator Thane? This is a huge night for us with the cake auction, and I know the board meeting is supposed to get over at 10. I'll get home around 10 tonight, sorry.
We'll take 5 minutes. Let's give a little report.
So, okay, because if we're not gonna bring it, I know you're gonna make it, I kind of heard you saying, bring up some things, but they could use me if we're not gonna bring up any more.
This is just some talking, there's been some gossip going around the legislature that might impact these things.
Okay, so if you don't mind and my board doesn't mind, I'd like to go in so I can kind of in preparation. Okay, thank you. I apologize.
Because I don't think we have time to get into any of these particularly.
Have a
So,
good night.
Thanks.
Before you start, Madam Chair,
Yes.
before you start, do we understand what our goal is? Do we understand could we go through that just specifically?
The list of change,
Yeah, what is being expected for you guys?
I have
For your board, not
changing
you
the
guys.
TAC to the tech advisory, and then I have in the performance framework.
And there's another paragraph on that page about student.
Yeah. And then another is the performance framework to do the standard that we just talked about. Do you have something else?
No, there was on page 25, we could look at that wording to see if it's clear about the difference between CT and academics. So we're not really interested in the academic side.
No.
And maybe change the wording of
Well,
collaboration.
no, we need to read it closer. It doesn't say that we're going to provide any, though we do have a teacher that runs the IDLA programs, and those are academic programs, and we're really not teaching them. We're just, we're more making them available to students that for some reason are taking them at the high school. I don't know what the reasons are, don't fit with class schedule or whatever it happens to be. So that was the only one, only other one is we look at that. Good.
And just I want to thank the boards, both boards, and the attendees too, because it was important.
Why don't we just do that? I don't think we have time to really go over anything. If you want to talk to me afterwards, I'll do it.
So the next, we can do another joint meeting?
Yeah,
March. 13th to 14th.
you tell us when and we will show up.
So we're looking at a March joint meeting.
If the meeting be on Friday, then we can have it after 10.
Maybe the 15th.
I'm available on
We
Friday.
need to do it prior to that.
Oh, the 15th is the deadline?
Yeah. So it looks like the 1st or the 8th.
Late, we already have a board meeting further.
Do we,
Are we talking about February?
March.
do we need to meet again for to go over the
What
charge again?
That's what, let's ask.
Is that what you want me to meet again? About the charters? The charter?
I
I
just
think
did a quarterly
maybe
joint
in
meeting.
February then.
Yeah.
With the changes. So
If
March
you
would
want-
be too far out. Okay, then you meet on Fridays is that?
First, 15th is still good.
Yeah.
February 15th.
What time?
That's quick. I mean, that's
We can do it.
only 2 weeks.
We can
3
do it.
weeks.
But I don't think we have that many, I mean, it's
No, we
not,
can do it.
I think we can do it 2 weeks.
And we've got Bob
Well,
and
you
Bill
don't,
on our board too.
but we'll meet another school district board meeting before that.
That's the 13th.
13th, we have school board.
Okay.
I didn't know you guys like meetings so much.
You'd be surprised.
Evaluation, I don't think is happening. This is coming up pretty quick.
This is 14th and 15th. I think you
Yeah,
said.
so
And ours is the 19th and 20th. So it's the next week.
So we'll want to meet subsequent to that.
So they would just be
Well, I called
finished
Dale and
when-
just have them
on the 15th.
draft up what their end letter looks like. Have us work, because it's gonna be on the Advanced Ed website of what we need to work on. Have them give us and then see if it passes muster. And if it doesn't, then we can always work. That's setting up the.
Are you thinking this 22nd of February? Or
I'm thinking I can call Dale on Monday and get an answer and figure out what we can do to meet anything else.
So 15th it is then,
of February?
of February?
What time?
I'm not available that day, but don't hold the train for me.
Are you on the following Friday?
22nd?
I am.
Yeah, let's do it.
The 22nd?
Hmm?
What time does everyone have available?
Would 4 o'clock work?
Well, it works, but Jim, do you?
The 22nd, I'm available.
4, is that a good time?
Sure.
Okay. And everybody else, I just want to pick up Tim.
I invited you not to schedule around. it.
Yeah, I know, I don't know why I asked you.
Okay,
Where are we gonna have it this time? Back in the district office?
Oh, I think so. And we have a few more people if they want to come. It's a little intimate today. Okay. You like it?
We wanted to formally put on the thank you to you all for taking the time and interest in meeting together, and so I just want to say thank you. Thank you for making the time and scheduling it on your calendars, and we look forward to working together more closely and doing what's right for our kiddos. So
we're gonna have some exciting news by next time. Yeah, everything's going on.
Anything goes down?
a motion to adjourn,
Second.
Who moved?
Bill,
Bill.
Bob second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
On to the kickoff.
Thank you.
As far as I can move.
They have the results of this year. I thought they already.
Give it away.